Hey, what's happening? Gene Ginsburg here. How's it going?
Hey, Angela Giles here. It's going good. I was just making videos, and of course, my computer decided to crash this morning, but I got it up
Oh,
and running again.
yes, that's
Yeah.
crazy. Yeah, mine also had some updates right before before this Facebook Live. So I was like, all right, I'll freaking restart it and do the whole update thing because otherwise it's just gonna it always does that. Inopportune times you feel like.
Well, yeah. I mean, I think it's just life, how it is sometimes. It makes you slow down and be like, okay, life is good. So, Jean, I'm excited to talk about today. If you're getting started with podcasting as a way to get yourself out there, should you start your own podcast or should you be a guest on others? And I am sure we both have an opinion on that, Jean. So I'd love to hear your thoughts.
Yeah, I think I can start there. When I first started podcasting, I was a guest on other people's podcasts before I started my own, probably for a couple of years before I started my own podcast. And the reason for that for me, again, this might be different for others, but for me, I needed to kind of get a little bit clear on my messaging, also have a little bit more experience with speaking. So that allowed me to hone in on my skills a little bit more before I started my own podcast. So that was kind of, for me, it was almost like training wheels before I did it myself. What about you?
So I agree with your philosophy that you should start on other people's podcasts as guests, but I did mine backwards, of course. So I hired a mentor and he's like, you need to get out and speak. So we put together my keynote speech and he's like, start a podcast. So I'm like, okay. I had no idea what I was doing, like zero idea. And I had been interviewed a few times before on different things, but so I started my own podcast and I went it down and I learned on my own and all the hard knocks. And I'm the queen of doing that, unfortunately. I've learned better now in the past few years, but I will say that it was really eye-opening and it was really cool. And you definitely can do that. But I think if I would have been on the guest on other people's podcasts, especially more successful ones, I would have been able to get some shortcuts. Even though I had a mentor who was awesome, by the way, it's still good to like get that experience under your belt before you go try to do it yourself. So I would highly recommend to do it the way you shared, Jean, which is go be a guest on a lot of podcasts, get a feel for the different types of it, people do things differently. Some people interviews, like it's all done differently. And get a feel for what you like and how you want to run yours, the good, the bad, and the ugly, right? So, yeah.
No, that's a very good point. So if you guys are thinking about doing that, I would say first start off, just do some outreach to your network and see who's a podcast host. I'm going to tell you that you're going to find a lot of people who are podcast hosts because everyone and their brother now has a podcast. So, and they typically would be very welcoming to have you on as a guest. I have reached out. I have gotten some nasty comments and nasty feedback because I asked to be on somebody else's podcast. But typically, 99% of the time, people are very welcoming and open. And if they say, if they don't have guests or maybe you're not a good fit, they will, say, hey, thanks for letting us know, but we are, might not be a good fit for you. And I've gotten those kinds of responses where, maybe my area of expertise is not exactly 100% down the line that they, the topics that they discuss. So, but yeah, most people will be very welcoming to have guests, especially individuals who have some sort of area of expertise, but do your research for sure before you reach out. The way I did it is I looked into on LinkedIn, I have about 15,000 connections. And so I just went and did a search for podcast host. I first did my research, so don't just blatantly and blanketly go out there and start like spamming people, but figure out which ones are a good fit and then go after those and send them a message, let's say on LinkedIn or via email.
Well, I think that's really smart. And I want to address, you said something, well, two things. One, I did some ad agency work for quite a bit for, a long time. And that's one of those services we provided is doing outreach to get on people's podcasts. And it was the same response, Jean. I'm sorry, we're full. We're not taking guests for another 6 months, da, 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 da. I never did, though. I've never experienced what you experienced where someone was nasty to you about asking to be on a podcast. So I want to talk about that because
Why?
it's important, especially if people are, if this is your very first attempt to get out and get more visible and you haven't experienced any negative like pushback, I think it's important that you understand that that's part of life, that you are going to get that occasionally. Some people, they're just rude and it's all a reflection of them. So if you encounter that, Jean, to, um, I would love for you to share your experience on how you handled that, right? So you didn't take it to heart, like, oh my gosh, I shouldn't have asked. How sometimes, well, I would be the person that would do that, right? Kind of thing. Well, did I say something?
Obviously I didn't take it to heart, but I've already been, I've been down this road many times. Not like, just, people send me nasty comments on social media or whatever. Just like, so
Right.
for me, I'm like, yeah, whatever. Somebody clearly is having a shitty day. And if I were that guy, I probably would be having a shitty day. Yeah. Anyway, it was just, but I guess the point is, I don't need to get into the details of everything. One, no, I didn't take it to heart. No, it wasn't like anything that I mean, I still remember it, but it's not like anything I think about. But it's important not to take those comments and have them linger, because I see that a lot with entrepreneurs, and that is something that I address a lot, and we address that here, is that, you will get nasty comments, but the thing is resilience, right? Because your message and what you want to do and what you want to say and having your community is much bigger than some asshole, pardon my French, who's having a shitty day. So and it will come with time. It will come with experience. I remember this distinctly. So back maybe 4 years ago, but before I started like really getting onto social media, and before I started posting several times a day and writing articles and blogs and things like that, I remember I was part of this mastermind, and I actually said that to them. We were having one of our mastermind meetings, and I was like, I'm really kind of having confidence issues where I don't know if I want to do this whole social media thing and putting myself out there. And, I feel like what happens if I get nasty comments? And it's like, yeah, you go through that, you address it, and then you start doing it. And then eventually, those nasty comments don't bother you.
Well, it's true. And I think it's so funny when you get nasty comments. I look at it now because for me, they bothered me a lot in the beginning, and I took things to heart. I really, truly am like, did I do something wrong? Did I say the wrong thing? Is this not kosher? Like all of those things. But what I found is usually it's the other, if I did something wrong, if I made a mistake, honor it. Number two, if someone else wants to bite your head off, and I even had a very successful, actually 2 people, this happened to me before, 2 very successful people go after me to their networks. It was bad. But what I learned was, hey, I didn't do anything wrong. So that was what's interesting. It's interesting to me how some people feel like it's okay for them to treat other people bad and be nasty and rude. But the real cool thing is about that is you can look at that as a growing experience and realize, do I want to be that person? Do I want to come across like that? When I reach that level of success, do I want to be that person? Do I want to be so mean and so rude? Is that who I want to show up as? And for me, it's a resounding no. I will never, ever treat anyone like that. I just don't. That's not okay with me.
And even if you do something wrong, it's there's a certain way of addressing it, right? The person can go to you and say, hey, X, you did this, that's not cool. They can say it in a normal, calm fashion and, address your mistake, right? We all do that, right? But being nasty and being
taking
rude is just so.
Yeah. One of my situations is I had a VA that I had trained, and this VA went out and said something. It wasn't bad, but I'm like, yeah, that's kind of borderline. And this person literally plastered it all over to her networks. And I'm the kind of person, there's no need to take screenshots of conversations you have with people and plaster it everywhere. That makes you look like an asshole. And not only that, why are you doing it? Are you so insecure in yourself that you have to vilify someone else to everybody else? That's kindergarten. That's that's rude. That's bullying. You don't need to do that. And here's the thing. If you are on the receiving end of stuff like that, look at it as a growing experience. You're growing, you're showing up, you're being visible. People are going to be like that. And there's just unfortunately bullies and jerks in this world. So I want you to look at it as, how can you grow? What can you do differently if you should? And how can you respond or not respond? And how do you deal with this? And how do you want to show up? So that's, I know that we were talking about podcasting, but when you mentioned that, Jane, I really like to talk about that because we get that a lot. And there's a lot of people coming into the online space now that are new to the online space, and they may encounter this and not know how to handle it. So no matter whether it happens, whether you're reaching out to be on a podcast or in any situation, really like take to heart the things that we shared. So that's my
I mean, I think we could do a whole podcast. Whole like Facebook Live on how to handle your haters. We can probably do that sometime in the next couple of weeks. But if you guys have any questions about podcasting, let us know. Or if you have any questions about haters online, let us know too. But the one thing I do encourage you is that don't take these comments to heart, because what I do see sometimes happening is that people will get nasty comments or something like that, and they will like feel really bad, and they will go back and like just kind of stop doing what they were doing. Like, so stop with their business, stop with their outreach, stop with their social media or whatever it might be. And that's not really what you want. Like, you shouldn't allow one person to change the course of your life because somebody was mean or nasty. So just keep that in mind. Like, I encourage you to think about it. Like, a lot of times, we do want to pull back, and we're like, oh, wow, like maybe I shouldn't do that, or maybe I shouldn't, go out there and talk about my message. But don't let that deter you from moving forward, because also, like, the other thing I think about is that, like, when these people send me nasty comments, the thing that I think about is, like, they don't pay my bills. Like, I want to go out there and I am free to make my own money, to engage, to do whatever I want, right? Like, these people don't pay my bills, so they can't tell me what to do. And that's what I think about in the back of my head when I get that.
Well, and honestly, I agree with you. And my take is, people that are so rude and unhappy, they're going to always pick at you. That's just their nature. They'll pick at everyone. And you just have to like step back and realize it, look at it for what it really is, and move on.
Yeah. Absolutely.
It is.
Cool. Anything else you want to add before we wrap up?
Well, I just want to say one other quick thing about podcasts. If you're starting out and you're wanting to be a guest on different podcasts, I would retro engineer it. So I would try to figure out, like, set some goals. So if you want to be on one podcast a week, be interviewed on one podcast a week or one a month, figure out, like, start doing, some outreach, and then figure out kind of like the percentage of people that actually return, your outreach, return your message, and how many times you're getting booked. So you can have some data to go on, so that in the future, as you set goals, you know what you need to do in order to get on X amount of podcasts. I think goal setting is really important in this aspect. That's what we did. And we ended up knowing exactly how many, we'd have to reach out to X amount of podcast owners to get accepted and get a certain amount of interviews every month. So I find that was really helpful too.
Yep, absolutely. Well, setting goals is important in general. So definitely. Well, great. Thanks everybody for being here. Super excited to do all of these. We do them every day, 5 days a week, Monday through Friday, 11 a.m. Pacific, 12 Mountain. I'm like, wait, hold on. What time is it? Yes, it's 12 Mountain. So we love to see you here. And if you have any questions, please add them here, or you can private message us. We always love taking questions and then talking about them on the show here. So we love to see you next time, and we wish you a wonderful